Superintendent, Omaha's mayor says the city has no plans to close two Elkhorn elementary schools, which opened this week during ongoing construction and mounting safety concerns for parents.
First Alert 6 Investigates discovered the two new buildings opened their doors to students despite not having their occupancy certificates. Mayor John Ewing says he was told the schools have security at each of the doors, making sure only authorized personnel go inside. Today, the mayor says he wants to change the process for getting schools opened.
There has been kind of an unofficial understanding of these processes between the City Permits and Inspections Division and the school districts. I want a more formalized process where they reach out to us and we reach out to them to ensure we know at what stage they're going to be and that they have all the items that we need done in order to feel safe about having a school occupied.
Mayor went on to say that other schools in Omaha have opened without their occupancy permit. He says now that he's mayor, he wants to fix that.
Officials with Elkhorn Public Schools tell us they will share more information with families tomorrow about safety protocols and the anticipated timeline on the projects.
First Alert 6 broke this story on the concerns of the new Elkhorn schools on Monday.
Jacqueline Fernandez joins us now with a breakdown of what we've uncovered this week.
Brian, Aaron, we first told you about this on Monday, as you mentioned, when Elkhorn held an open house at those two new buildings. They delayed the event because of construction setbacks. Yesterday, First Alert 6 broke the news that the city believed Elkhorn was breaking the law by using the incomplete building. Some of the unfinished work includes parking lots, kitchen and art and music rooms. These were some of the parents' concerns.
There were men welding. There were rooms without electricity or air conditioning run to it. There were construction crews everywhere. We were really flabbergasted. Cords hanging from the ceiling.
The district tells us they completed all the work required by the fire marshal to bring children into the building, and they said the occupancy certificates are only given when projects are complete, which includes things like landscaping. Now, again, they will update parents tomorrow on the timeline for the project. We will continue to follow this story both on air and online as we learn more. Brian.
Jacqueline, thanks. We've been hearing from parents, and this story isn't going anywhere.